Let's dive in. Today we're tackling something that I'm sure is on everyone's mind. Implementing value stream mapping, VSM, in your UK Learning and Development Department.
Yes.
Specifically, we're zeroing in on how you recruit and onboard new staff.
That's a great place to focus.
And we're going to cover all the bases, like how to prioritize all the improvements you want to make, ensure accountability, navigate the implementation challenges, and, of course, measure your success.
That about covers it. Sounds like a plan.
Right. And luckily, we have an expert with us who's got loads of experience helping organizations like yours streamline their processes.
Well, thanks. I'm happy to be here and share what I've learned.
Fantastic. Now, before we get into all the practical stuff, I think it's worth taking a minute to clarify what a value stream actually says. You know, it's easy to get lost in all the jargon.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so easy to get caught up in just looking at individual departments when what we really need to be looking at is the entire process, right?
Yeah, the bigger picture.
Exactly. So a value stream is basically the sequence of all the activities involved in fulfilling a customer request from beginning to end. And when it comes to L&D, and specifically onboarding, who are your customers?
I'd say it's the new hires, right?
Yeah, them and the hiring managers.
Makes sense.
And the product. That's a smoothly onboarded employee who's ready to hit the ground running.
So it's about seeing the whole journey, not just like these isolated pieces.
Exactly. And value stream mapping helps you identify any hiccups along the way. This whole concept isn't actually new. It actually has its roots in the world of manufacturing. The term value stream itself, it first appeared in a book called The Machine That Changed the World, way back in 1990.
I remember reading about that. And I know the Lean Enterprise Institute, LEI, they run workshops where people can actually learn to see the waste in their processes.
Oh yeah, LEI is great for that.
I feel like once you learn to see it, you can't unsee it, can you?
That's the point. And the interesting thing about VSM is that it's actually surprisingly adaptable. You don't always need tons of data up front to get started.
It reminds me of something I read about the Mayo Clinic. There's a doctor there, Dr. Ting, who uses VSM to improve patient care. But get this, he focuses on the 95% of the time when patients aren't actually with doctors.
Oh, wow. Interesting approach.
Yeah, he's looking at the entire patient journey and finding ways to improve the overall experience.
That's really clever. I love that application of VSM, and I can see how applying that same mindset to onboarding could be really powerful.
Okay, so let's get practical. How would we go about mapping out the current state of our onboarding process? Where would we even begin?
Well, you always have to start with the trigger, right? What kicks off the whole thing? Is it when a job posting goes live, or when there's an internal requisition, or something else entirely?
I think in most cases it would be the approval of an internal requisition. So then, what are the main handoffs in the process?
Okay, so think about all the different departments involved. You've got HR, of course.
Yeah.
Then it goes to the hiring manager.
Right.
Then it would probably go to L&D for training, and then maybe to IT for systems access, things like that.
Yeah, that's the general flow.
So you've got to visualize that entire journey and pinpoint those crucial moments where responsibility shifts.
Okay, so as we're doing that, what should we be watching out for? What are the signs that things aren't as smooth as they could be?
Well, look out for any bottlenecks, delays, places where things get stuck. Is there a particular step that's consistently holding things up? Or maybe there's a ton of back and forth communication, or people are missing information, or there's a lot of rework because things weren't done properly the first time.
Right.
And don't forget about the human side of it all. Are new hires feeling lost or frustrated? Are hiring managers struggling to get their new team members up to speed?
Yeah, those are all telltale signs.
Absolutely. And it sounds like gathering data is important, but so is actually watching the process unfold in real time.
Right, being in the thick of it.
Yeah. What they call going to the gemba, the actual place where the work happens. That's essential. To truly understand the nuances of the current state, you've got to see it firsthand.
That makes a lot of sense. So what kind of data points should we be gathering while we're mapping out this current state?
Great question. So you'll want to focus on things like lead times, how long each step actually takes from start to finish, and process times, which is the actual hands-on time spent on a task.
Okay.
And don't forget about the percentage of work that's complete and accurate, sometimes called %CNA.
%CNA, what's that?
Basically, it tells you how often things are done right the first time without any rework. You don't want to be constantly fixing mistakes or clarifying things.
Right.
This data will give you a really solid baseline for measuring your progress.
So it's about really understanding where you are, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah. You've got to know where you're starting from before you can figure out where you want to go.
Exactly. It's about being honest with yourself about where you are so you can actually get somewhere better,
Yeah,
right?
makes sense. And once we've got that clear picture of our current state, where do we go from there? What's next?
Well, that's where the fun starts. That's when we can really start to imagine the ideal future state.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
So what would a truly streamlined and efficient onboarding process look like for, say, an L&D department?
This is where you get to dream big, you know?
I do love to dream big, but with so many possibilities, how do we decide which ones to focus on first? How do we prioritize all these amazing improvements we've come up with?
Yeah, that's the key. You need a system, right? A way to sort through it all. One tool that can be really helpful here is the PACE chart.
The PACE chart, what's that?
So PACE stands for projects, activities, countermeasures, and easy to implement.
And it's a great way to categorize all your improvement ideas and rank them based on how much impact they'll have. You know, and how feasible they are to actually put into practice.
Right. So it's a way to filter through everything and decide what's actually going to move the needle.
Exactly. You want to make sure you're putting your energy where it matters most.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then when we're putting together our L&D transformation plan, what criteria should we use to decide what to prioritize?
Well, the biggest thing is making sure your improvements actually align with your strategic goals.
Right. You've got to have a purpose.
Right. Right. What are those big picture objectives you're trying to achieve for your L&D department?
Yeah, it's got to be more than just like making things faster or easier.
Exactly. So is it reducing the time it takes for new hires to become competent? Or boosting employee engagement? Or maybe improving retention rates? Whatever your goals are, your improvements need to be working towards them.
So everything you do should be pushing you in the right direction towards those big picture goals.
Yeah, that's the idea. You want to look for those quick wins too, you know, the changes that are going to have a big impact both on the new hire's experience and on your department's efficiency.
And are there any examples that come up a lot when you're doing VSM for onboarding, like an L&D?
Yeah.
Any go-tos?
Oh yeah, for sure. One thing that comes up a lot is streamlining those handoffs between departments. You know, can we make it so that information flows smoothly without any hiccups?
Makes sense.
Or maybe we can empower individuals to make decisions without having to get a bunch of approvals. That can speed things up a lot.
I can see that.
Another thing to think about is the timing of certain activities. What if new hires could get access to some essential resources and information before their first day even?
Oh yeah, that would definitely help people feel less overwhelmed.
Right, like they're already a part of the team.
Yeah, it would make a big difference.
Another helpful thing to keep in mind is, do you remember that definition of optimal performance from the book Value Stream Mapping?
Vaguely, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Remind me.
Okay, so it talks about eliminating all those unnecessary expenses, making sure the workflow is smooth, achieving 100% compliance, meeting all the customer requirements, and importantly, treating employees with respect.
Okay. Yeah, that rings a bell. I can see how that could be helpful.
Yeah, it's a good framework to use as you're deciding what to improve. It helps you remember that, you know, you're not just tweaking a process, you're also affecting people.
Right. People's actual experiences.
Exactly. So, okay, we've mapped out our current state and we've got this great vision for the future state. But now comes the hard part, actually making it happen.
Uh-oh, this is where I start to get nervous. How do we make sure these plans don't just end up gathering dust on a shelf somewhere?
Yeah.
You know, how do we avoid this becoming just another initiative that, like, fizzles out?
Oh, I hear you. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But the great thing about VSM is it's got these built-in ways to deal with that. It's all about accountability. And one key role in all of this is what they call a value stream champion.
A value stream champion. What's that?
So this is the person who owns the success of this whole thing, the whole initiative.
Okay, so it's kind of like having a project manager specifically for this transformation. Someone who keeps everyone on track and moving forward.
You got it. Someone who has the authority to, you know, to remove any roadblocks, make decisions, and hold people accountable.
Right, so you need someone who's really in charge.
Yeah. And it's also really important to, like, clearly define roles and responsibilities within the transformation plan. You know, who's doing what, by when, and what are the expected outcomes.
Okay, so everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. You want to make sure everyone's on the same page from the start.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the process, it's also about building a culture of accountability and ownership.
Exactly. You nailed it. And don't underestimate the importance of regular progress reviews. Well, those are key to keeping the momentum going, figuring out where things might be getting stuck and, just celebrating all the wins along the way.
Yeah, it's good to celebrate the wins, even the little ones.
Totally. It keeps everyone motivated. But we've also got to be realistic. Implementing change, especially in big organizations, it's never easy. There are always challenges.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So what are some common challenges we might run into, and how can we deal with them?
Okay, well, a big one is culture. People get used to doing things a certain way, even if it's not the best way.
Yeah, comfort zones.
Exactly. And sometimes people can be skeptical of new ways of working. They resist the change, or they're just a little afraid of the unknown.
So how do we win them over? How do we get everyone on board with this L&D transformation?
Communication is key. Be upfront about the goals of doing VSM, the positive impact it's going to have, and how it's going to affect the people involved.
Okay, so be honest and address any concerns head on.
Exactly. Let people know that there might be some bumps along the way, but that you're committed to working through them together.
Makes sense.
And remember, change doesn't have to happen all at once. You can pilot things in a smaller group first, maybe a department or a team, to see how it goes. It's a good way to test the waters and make any adjustments before you roll it out to the whole organization.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So you're basically building up momentum and showing everyone that this is like a real commitment to continuous improvement, not just a temporary thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've mapped our current state, we've come up with this awesome future state, and we've thought about all the challenges we might face. But how do we know if all our hard work is actually paying off? How do we measure the success of all this VSM stuff?
That's a great question. That's where all those metrics we talked about earlier come in. The lead times, the process times, the percentage complete and accurate.
Oh, right. So it's back to the data.
Right. You want to compare your before and after numbers. Are things moving faster now? Are tasks being completed more accurately? Those are the things you want to track.
So you can see if you're actually making progress?
Exactly. And don't forget to gather qualitative data, too. Talk to your new hires, the hiring managers, your L&D team. Find out what their experiences have been like and how they feel the process has changed.
Yeah, get their feedback.
Yeah. It's important to understand the human impact of all these improvements, not just the numbers.
Right. Numbers don't tell the whole story.
And remember that example we talked about before, the one about the hospital?
The one where they shaved like 2 minutes off the time it took to do a CT scan.
Yeah, exactly. And that small change ended up saving them a ton of money.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's the power of VSM.
So it's all about finding those little things that can have a big impact.
Exactly. Those leverage points where even a small tweak can have a ripple effect throughout the whole system.
I'm starting to see how powerful this can be. It's about working smarter, not harder.
You got it. And it all starts with being willing to step back and look at the big picture and question those assumptions you might have about how things are done.
It's really about challenging the status quo, seeing if there's a better way to do things.
Yeah, exactly. And, you don't need mountains of data to get started with VSM. That's the beauty of it. It's actually quite nimble.
It is. And, thinking back to that doctor to the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Ting, he used VSM to improve patient care by focusing on, get this, the 95% of the patient journey that happens outside of appointments.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was a great example.
What if we could apply that same thinking to onboarding?
Right. Imagine that. Thinking about all those little moments between the initial job posting and the new hire's first day, all those touch points.
Exactly.
Are there any places where things tend to get held up, or where new hires end up feeling confused or frustrated?
Those are the areas to zero in on.
Yeah, those are the gold mines for improvement. And remember how we talked about the importance of going to the Gemba?
Oh, right. Getting out there and seeing what's actually happening.
Yeah. It's one thing to look at data on paper, but it's a whole different thing to actually observe the process in action. See it with your own eyes.
It gives you a much better understanding of, the reality of the situation.
Absolutely. And once you have that clear picture of your current state, then you can really start to envision your ideal future state. This is where you can let your imagination run wild and think about what a truly seamless and efficient onboarding process could look like.
I like that. No limits.
Yeah.
But how do you actually make those dreams a reality? That's the million-dollar question.
Right. And that's where prioritization comes in and accountability. Remember how we talked about aligning your improvement efforts with the strategic goals of your L&D department.
Yeah, making sure everything's connected to the big picture.
Exactly. And that PACE chart we talked about, projects, activities, countermeasures, easy to implement.
Yeah, right.
It can be a really useful tool for, for sorting through all those ideas and deciding what to tackle first.
So you don't get overwhelmed. And what about accountability? We talked about that too. How do you make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, a big part of that is having a value stream champion. Remember?
Oh, right. The
Yeah.
person who's ultimately responsible for making sure this whole thing succeeds.
Yep, that's the one. And it's also crucial to have clear roles and responsibilities within the transformation plan itself. Everyone needs to know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, by when, and what the expected outcome is. No ambiguity.
Right, so everyone's on the same page from the start.
Exactly. And those regular progress reviews we talked about, those are really important for, for keeping the momentum going and addressing any challenges that pop up along the way.
Okay, so that's all great in theory. But we all know that implementing change, especially in a big organization, it's not always smooth sailing. So what are some of the challenges that people typically run into? And how can they overcome them?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, and this might sound obvious, but it's cultural. People just get used to doing things a certain way. Even if it's not the best way, it's familiar.
Yeah, it's comfortably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are just a little bit resistant to change. They're skeptical of new ways of working. Maybe they're a little afraid of the unknown,
So how do you get everyone on board? How do you get people excited about this L&D transformation?
Communication. That's the key. You've got to be upfront about the goals of VSM.
Okay, transparency.
Yeah. Tell people about all the benefits you expect to see, how it's going to affect them personally, and, just be honest about the fact that there might be some bumps in the road along the way, but you're committed to working through them together.
So basically, be open and address any concerns head on.
Exactly. And don't forget, change doesn't have to happen overnight.
Right.
You can start small.
Baby steps.
Yeah. Pilot the changes with a smaller group, maybe a department or a team, and see how it goes. Get some feedback, make some adjustments, and then once you've got things running smoothly, then you can roll it out more widely.
It's a good way to build confidence and momentum.
Exactly. You're showing everyone that this is a real commitment to continuous improvement. It's not just a flavor of the month kind of thing.
Okay, so we've talked about mapping our current state, envisioning our future state, and addressing those potential challenges. But how do we know if all this hard work is actually making a difference?
That's the big question. And that's where those metrics we talked about earlier come back into play.
Oh, right.
Those lead times, process times, percentage, complete, and accurate.
Percent CNA. Got it.
You want to compare your before and after numbers. Are things moving faster now? Are tasks being completed more accurately? Those are the things you want to track.
So you can actually see if you're making progress.
Exactly. And don't forget about the qualitative data, too. Talk to your new hires, the hiring managers, your L&D team. Ask them about their experiences. How do they feel the process has changed? Get that feedback.
Right, because numbers don't always tell the whole story.
Exactly. You want to understand the human impact of all these improvements, not just the numbers. Remember that example we talked about earlier with the hospital?
One where they, shaved 2 minutes off the time it took to do a CT scan.
That's the one.
And ended up saving them a bunch of money. It was incredible.
It is amazing how these things can snowball.
It's that's the power of VSM.
Right. It's all about finding those little leverage points, those seemingly small changes that can have a massive ripple effect throughout the whole system.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Right. Exactly. And it all starts with being willing to, step back, look at the big picture, and question your assumptions about how things are done. So as you embark on this journey of transforming your L&D onboarding process with VSM, I want to leave you with this thought. What other ripple effects might you see? How could a smoother, more efficient onboarding process impact things like employee retention, overall engagement, even your company's bottom line?
Something to think about.
Yeah, think big. Don't be afraid to embrace the power of VSM.
Great advice. And that brings us to the end of another deep dive. We covered a lot today, but I hope you found it helpful. For those of you who want to learn more about value stream mapping, we highly recommend checking out a couple of books, Value Stream Mapping and The Outstanding Organization by Karen Martin. And of course, the Lean Enterprise Institute, LEI. They offer some fantastic workshops and training resources on all things lean and VSM.
Yeah, they're a great resource.
Absolutely. So that's it for today. We're so excited for all of you as you start to implement these ideas in your own L&D departments. I have no doubt you'll achieve amazing things. Until next time, happy map.